actually, I was always interested in nature and biology, and that was the reason why I studied actually general biology with all the subjects, zoology, botany, microbiology, genetics, and all these things. And I was interested in all these fields, and they were all quite nice to me, and I had really a hard time to decide which direction I want to go. And then I worked with a specific person. I did an internship at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, which is the Max Planck Institute for Biochemistry. And then I got exposed to this kind of research, which is actually very related to molecular biology. And I realized that this is what I really like. I had also, I think I had an experimental talent. You know, you feel that when you do experiments. And I liked it from the first day on and stick to it. And this was the right decision. That's exactly what I like, and that's what I want to do. And I think it's the best way to really follow a specific problem into the little details, because otherwise it's pretty difficult to, really solve the big problems. Well, it was first of all my PhD supervisor at this mentioned Max Planck Institute. His name was Utz Fischer, and he was a junior group leader, very young, just came back from a postdoc from the US, and was a lot of energy in his group, and I had the impression I'm working at a very, very hot and important thing. And so I came into this field of RNA biology, and then like 2 or 3 years later, RNAi was developed, and I met Tom Tuschl, the person who initially developed small RNAs as iRNAs to be used in human cells or in mammalian cells. And he actually asked me whether I would be willing to join him in New York and become a postdoc there, and I did that. And he was the second person in my life who was really an impressive person, and I stick to the research field where I worked with as postdoc in New York. So these were the two people actually, my postdoc supervisor and my PhD supervisor. I remember, it's not that such an important prize, but for me it was an important prize because the young graduate students and postdocs at the Max Planck Institute, they were awarded the so-called Max Planck Junior Research Award every year for an important paper. And that was actually the second paper that I published as a PhD student that was awarded with this small award, but for me a very important award, because it was a very early times and I was very young at that time. And in the other awards I got, they were not awarded to a specific paper, more like contributions to a field. This is a tendency all over the planet, and it's also true for European countries. And I have clear and strong feelings about that, because I think it's wrong. It's the wrong way to go. Like, I'm not hesitant to say that, because what is translational research, right? So where do we start? Where do we stop? Why do we define research in a specific way? Research is having a specific problem, and we want to find out how it works. And you cannot direct this in a specific way, because research is always open and it leads you into a specific direction. So politicians cannot come and say, look, you need to develop something, but this is not research, this is developing, this is research and development that companies are doing, but it's not what research is. So this is the wrong direction. On the other hand, I do understand that there's money involved, there's taxpayers, and they want to know what we're doing, and politicians have to be elected, and they want to tell people why they are putting money into the system. So we need somehow also some figures that we can kind of show people. But I think it's the absolutely wrong way of funding research. And I think Germany, I just know it from Germany, is a good example of funding basic research over the last 100 years or so. Before the war and these bad times that we had in Germany, all the physics people working in physics, Einstein, all these people were all Germans, Max Planck and all these guys. And if you would tell them they have to do something translational, they would just laugh. And then I think this is a good tradition we had, and now we are a high-tech country, right? So out of this basic research, it was always well-funded in Germany. We developed all these high-tech things without doing any focused translational research, as people want us to do now. So I think it's wrong, and I hate that actually. I do. I actually decided to study biology because of the teacher, the high school teacher. Yeah, his name was Sommermann, and he was a pretty talented biologist. And I felt from the first day on, this is the direction I want to go. And yeah, it influenced my whole life actually. So yeah, I do remember. I actually met him just end of last year, I think. Biochemistry for the scientific community, that was the tough question I mentioned at the beginning. Well, one thing I would say is that the days now, I think these individual subjects that we're always trying to define, they don't exist anymore in that sense that as they existed like 20 years ago. So now I think just look at a scientific paper, if you want to publish in a good high journal, you cannot just focus on one thing. You need to look a little bit here and look a little bit there. You probably at some point need a knockout system, a mouse maybe, an animal, and then you have to take things from the animal and do biochemistry with it. Or you need to do high throughput methods and then go back into biochemistry. So I think this is all going more or less into one direction, and they're not these individual specialists anymore that one can only do biochemistry and the other one can do this and that, and you need to integrate all these things, mainly with collaborations. But I don't think that biochemistry it's hard to define. It has aspects from both ends, and it's merging more and more, right? So I guess in the future we'll see that more and more. And what we also will see more in the future is kind of scaling down things like single cell biochemistry. So now we know single cell analysis of transcriptomes, of sequencing of the DNA, but we have not yet reached the point where we can look at individual proteins in a single cell. And I think this will be the future also of biochemistry for all of us, I guess. Pretty sure. That's also a good question. Well, I think, I don't know. I mean, kids, they always, kids try to learn everything and they are open to everything. So I don't think that we need to guide this a lot. So they're trying to figure out how nature anyway works. And we should more teach them to be open to all these things and interested in all these things and try to explain a little bit here and there. But they should also have the time and the space to experience things themselves, and not too much guidance, I think, at very early stages. I think it's different with languages because they pick up things quite fast and when the brain develops. But science and nature and these things, I think it's a natural part what kids explore anyway, and they're interested in it anyway. I guess this should be guided a little bit maybe by the parents, but I don't think that it should be like a subject in like early daycare and kindergarten. I don't think so. Well, there's a big discussion always going on from different sides, and journals are very powerful because they have high impact points, and I think scientists don't like it in general, but I've thought about it a lot. I cannot really come up with something better. We need to measure things. That's important because there's only a limited amount of money that has to go into science, and people have to know what is somehow excellent and what not. It doesn't mean that high impact journals and papers, they are always very excellent, but at least they go to a very competitive process. And sure, it's sometimes a fashion that things can be published high and others not. We need something to measure, and age index I think is quite okay because it measures how much you're cited by other. It's not only it's not the impact, it's how much are you cited by your peers, which I think is a good thing. Of course, you cannot compare people between different fields because there's different traditions in citing and publishing in different fields. So you should always stick within a specific subject and field, and then you can compare people. I think that's possible. And so the H index, I think, is okay. And impact points, I don't know. I mean, I guess we have to live with it. Well, I guess it's important. Such information would be important for students, I think, students and graduate students, because they can tell, or even postdocs, you know, if you go to a lab where this lab produces a lot of offspring in a way that they also become independent and successful scientists, it means that this supervisor is helpful, supportive, and really brings people into the right fields, you know, and supports them. This is good to know. You find a lot of, I'm sure you find a lot of, and I also know some of them, you find a lot of big names and big scientists who have not at all produced any other big scientists, right? So, and this would tell you that these probably egos that can only be one person existing in a specific field, and this would tell you something about that, how supportive people are. In a negative way, maybe this is also in this question, that there's kind of, I don't know how to say this in English, you know, some people only support their own people and not others. I mean, this is probably the downside of the medal a little bit. I'm not sure how important this is at the end. I think we have to face it. Research as we do it at the moment is competitive, and it has no borders, and it is performed in the industrialized countries mainly because there's money involved, and many experiments you can only do with a big budget, and it means even for us, I mean, at a small university, if you compare us to people in Harvard or the bigger universities in the US, it's really difficult to compete because they have just other resources as we have. And our resources are probably even better than resources here. So it all comes down to money. I know, but it's not there. But if money is not there, then education, I think, is important, very important. Early education, that the kids really, not only to bring them into the scientific system, I think that education is two sides. One, that you educate the new scientists of tomorrow, but you also educate all the people that they accept science as an important way of development, right? So if you don't have this, you can have a few excellent scientists, they will never establish a scientific community because the rest of the community who pays actually the taxes, they will not accept this. So it's important to have like a really basic, broad education to anybody. I think this is the base, and this is not present in many countries actually, if you think about it. Even in the US, I think it's not the case. So this of course, this is what developing countries should definitely do. This is where they have to start, you know, taking the young kids and really educate them as good as possible. The meeting is great. It's, as I said in my presentation, I think it's very lively. It's a lot of young people. It's a huge meeting with everybody brings a poster, and sometimes there's not much on the poster, but you know, people want to discuss projects and things like that, and how they set up the projects. It's very nice. I enjoy it a lot. Very good. Exactly. I don't exactly know who's student, who not, but if I look at the people, they look quite young, so I think many of them are students. So we talk about undergraduates or graduate students?
We have both here actually.
Well, I think this is the beauty of this meeting actually. I mean, this is really what it feels young, and I think that's nice. And they're all excited, and they all, you know, think about what to do next and how to get the project running. And I think that is the very cool and nice thing about this meeting. I like it.